Welcome to Longterm. I'm Ty King, and on this podcast where we've been discovering so much about recovery, we've also discovered there's so many different nuanced sections of just having an addiction. And how do you even identify when you have a problem or addiction? And sometimes, with something that's so embraced by society and we just accept as it's just part of life, you have a hard day and you go to the bar, right? What happens to mom when she is so tired of taking to the kids to soccer practice, right? You go home, you have the big glass of wine. I mean, it becomes a trope in all of these different media films. And how do you know when you have a problem with that? How do you know when you're binge drinking? How do you know? And it's usually because you have some sort of effect the next day, right? And so you're feeling something, usually a hangover. There's the pukey ones. There's the obvious ones, right? Where you're physically just feeling ill. But then there's also the parts of your life that are just sort of falling apart because you can't really control those things because you're constantly trying to mend yourself back to health. And then we start this cycle. And then that's how, addiction happens. But there are several ways to intervene in there and to have a sort of, an amount of alcohol, I would say, that is acceptable to your body, right? It's really interesting to always talk to people who are offering alternatives rather than just quitting cold turkey, because there is no one size fits all solution for anyone that struggles with any kind of addiction or anyone that uses any sort of substance or alcohol or you name it. And so talking to experts like Erica Mallery, who we're going to have on here, who is a mindful drinking coach, which is something completely new to me. And I'm so excited to learn everything you have to talk about today.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, it is funny when it's like, what do you do? I
Yeah.
help you drink. Like I
Yeah.
teach you how to drink.
I think about that. Yeah. So you're not sitting on the stool over at the bar, right? And being like, well, tip your glass up just a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I have thought
Yeah.
about that. I'm like, do I just leave cards like
Yeah.
randomly out? Like,
Right.
wouldn't hurt,
Oh,
maybe.
on the bottom of the shot glasses and things. Yeah. That'd
Oh
be
yeah,
great. Yeah. So we can do the marketing and branding right here.
exactly.
So Erica, what exactly is a mindful drinking coach?
So just like you had said, addiction looks different for everyone. And we can get more into like my story and kind of how it came
Absolutely.
about. But at the end of the day, a lot of times just cold turkey, it does not work for everyone. It's intimidating. It is, the farthest from where you can even see yourself going. So learning how to drink mindfully is one step closer to, if you do want sobriety one day, great, but it doesn't put that label on it of having to be all or nothing, black and white, which, when it comes to drugs, alcohol, anything along those lines, the all or nothing approach can be incredibly dangerous. So that's really
Mm,
what it's focusing on, is a safer, more harm reduction approach to getting a better relationship, not only with whatever you're consuming, but most of all with yourself.
wow, that's incredible. And is this something that I don't know if people really think about that, about do I need a coach for this and to helping me, or do they feel like it's the pressure's all on me to get this right and I better not talk about it in public?
Well, that's the big thing, especially with alcohol. Pretty much all other drugs are just that. They're drugs that have the stigma, that have all
Hmm.
of that. Where alcohol is the most not only condoned, but encouraged drug to use. And, it's widely acceptable. And the problem with that is if you have any issue at all, it's shameful. It is, it's a morality thing, which we know, especially as you dive into this more, is not at all the case. But it is really just focusing on, again, that relationship that you have, but understanding that drinking, just like anything else, it's a muscle and you
Yeah.
have to strengthen that. So can
Right.
you go to the gym by yourself? Absolutely. But if you're working with a coach or a trainer, you're typically going to see results that you want to see quicker. And, so learn from someone who has been able to do it right and wrong so that
Yeah.
you don't have to make all the same mistakes and have it take twice, three times as long to get to the same place.
Absolutely. So how did you get into all of this?
So I had been doing life coaching for a couple of years, and then the pandemic hit, and I, like many, started drinking a lot more than
Yeah.
I had been. So there was just one day that I'm just like, huh, I don't know the last day I didn't have a drink. So it wasn't that I was, drinking up or waking up drinking vodka or anything like that, but I was definitely having that daily glass or two of wine, binging a lot on weekends because, we weren't doing anything, we weren't going anywhere. I am very lucky. My relationship with my husband is awesome. We're happy drunk. So, like, it wasn't impacting that. Life was good. But it was just several moments, throughout that time that I'm just like, I'm drinking more than I want. This is becoming habitual, like very mindless. It's something even, like 10 a.m. I'd be like, what wine am I going to have with dinner tonight? I'm just like, those are not thoughts that I wanted to take up my mental space and the energy. So that was when I really started diving into it a little bit more. But when I went online, everything that I found was like, if you are looking to drink less, you're an alcoholic, you have a drinking problem, you should never drink again. And not only did I not feel like that fit me at all, but more than anything, that was so intimidating. And I'm like, well, no, like if that's my only approach, I've done the crash diets, done all that, it has not worked. I'm not going to do that with alcohol either. So basically, because of my life coaching, I'm like, let me see if I can figure this out myself and do something that I would do with the people that I work with, coaching in other areas, and apply the same principles. So that's kind of how this was birthed in a sense. But yeah, so I was definitely the daily drinker, binge drinker, all the things that had to do with alcohol.
Incredible. What kind of life coaching were you doing before? I mean, just general overall balance of all
Yeah,
things.
general life coaching, really female empowerment, self love, that type thing, and then career coaching as well.
Was it hard to take your own advice? Because I know you.
God, oh yeah, it's so much easier like being able to, help
Of course.
people when you have the perspective. I mean, I'm a mom of two young kids, and I mean that's the biggest thing that you can see is just like it is so much easier to help other
Yeah.
people parents than it is to parent on your own. Like it's just like, oh my God. So yeah, taking your own advice completely different. But when you see what works, it's removing yourself from it. And it's like, okay, if I were to be helping someone else, how would I help them in this situation?
Mm,
And then,
yeah.
role reverse.
Yeah. There's a saying where you never look at the painter's house to tell what his work looks like because he's always busy painting everybody else's house.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
yes, so
Yeah.
so true.
So for this, where I mean, obviously you already had a passion for helping people, and that's kind of what you had built a career around. But now you sort of focused in and narrowed that down and niched it to people that were having a huge issue that was growing, especially during the pandemic. You were one of many who started buying more alcohol. That
Yes.
there was a huge uptick. I think it was like 34% increase in sales of alcohol for the beginning of the pandemic that happened nationally, and it
Hmm.
was non-discriminatory against all the demographic. So like everybody
Yeah.
was buying it, so to sort of deal, and that is kind of the area, would you say, where a lot of issues can arise from whenever you're stressed, and so you're drinking to sort of deal with the stress.
That is definitely what I find with so many of my clients, but especially with myself. My one rule now, if I were to follow nothing else, the one rule I follow is I don't drink for negative emotions because you realize how much of your drinking is for a negative thing. And boredom can fall under that, but a lot
Mm.
of times it's, the state of the world right now. Like we are so divided politically, it's just not a good
Oof.
place to be. That is so much stress. You can feel the energy in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people are drinking for that. That's a negative emotion. You had a stressful day at work, or the kids were just driving you bananas. Like those are all negative emotions. If you are using it essentially as a reward to get through the day, then that's for me the number one sign. Hey, let's take a look at this.
Right. Yeah. So when do people usually reach out to you? At what point? I mean, you obviously introduce yourself, and you're great at marketing. You've had several interviews and everything online. But when do people normally say, "Hey, I need your help"?
It's funny because I really work with like gray area drinkers, which you may or may not be familiar with that, but it's a very hard thing because it's not problematic yet.
Mm,
So, when do people actually make a change when it becomes a problem? So, I'm trying to help people so it never becomes that problem. It never becomes the rock bottom moment. So often, when you ask people in recovery, what was your rock bottom moment? They can probably list off 7, 8, 10 rock bottom
sure.
moments, so it's like, which one's actually going to do the trick? I, for myself, was like, I don't ever want it to get there. In my mind, I am into health and fitness, and I would never want myself or anyone else to wait until they have 300 pounds to lose to start eating healthy and exercising and doing all that. Same approach when it comes to consumption, and this can be consumption of really anything. But how can you just work on your habits in a sip-sized way to make it a lot more digestible and easy to follow through with, as opposed to having to rock your entire world and change everything. So
Mm,
that's really my mindset and approach. But I wish that people would reach out to me sooner,
yeah.
because it never needs to get to the point to where it is, okay, your only option is to never drink again, because
Right.
moderation is not for everyone. I will be the first to admit that, but it is possible for a lot of us.
Yeah, for sure. There's a saying in the recovery the field that I just learned about this week. As long as I've been learning about this, but people say put the shovel down, and it's
Mm,
like you don't know where rock bottom is. I mean, you keep digging and you keep digging and you keep digging, and there's a deeper rock bottom. It's
yeah, there will always be. Yeah.
yeah. So being able, it kind of seems like they have to kind of do a self-evaluation and being like, okay, what are the results of, what I've been doing as a drinking, as my drinking habits so far?
Yeah.
Is it becoming a problem? Are there any signs that it may become a problem? And then that would be a great time to reach out to you.
Yeah, and I know that people that are dealing with this, they've been thinking, whether it's been for months or years, like, do I have a drinking problem? Like, if I stopped today, could I do that? Or am I drinking too much? Or, just starting to ask those questions.
Hmm.
And I think that, like with the sober curious movement, it's helping a lot, just with understanding that a lot of people are, using alcohol, for example, in not the healthiest of ways, and that hopefully there is much less judgment around it and less shame. But most of the women that I work with, I do work with men, but majority of women, it's they're just tired of feeling this way, and they
Yeah.
know there has to be a better way, but they're also not ready for, I'm never going to drink again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So your passion to keep going with this, obviously you helped yourself. And so, another thing in recovery, I know I'm keep bringing this up because this is what we talk about all the time.
Yeah, 100%.
But they have something called peer support, right? So peer support is huge. It's somebody that's been in those same situations and they've, figured out a way out of it. And then they dedicate themselves to helping other people, climb up and to get control of their lives again. Right. And that's sort of what you're doing. You had your own experience. And because of that, you're not just an outsider that's giving, advice of what you think their problem is and how to fix that. Like you've lived that, you practiced it, and you've been doing life coaching for so long. And so that's incredible that's a service that exists that I think we should know more about. You know what I mean? Or more people should know that it exists and it's available to them. A lot of the people I talk to that have lived experience in recovery itself, I'm like, did you know whenever you had your problems that there were resources available to you? Which ones did you know about? And like hardly anybody's like, no, I didn't know where to even
No.
start. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and typically, like, the one thing that comes to mind for pretty much everyone would be AA or something along those
sure.
lines. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more options out there than AA and rehab. And
Right.
again, some that is absolutely needed and will forever be needed for people, absolutely. But
Of
hopefully, it
course.
never has to get there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not always available to people either, because depending on where they are. So I'm in Arkansas, which is like 90% rural towns, right? And so it's so hard. If there are so many places here where they don't even have an emergency room within, 40, 50 miles. And so there's no way for them to, if they have an overdose or if there's an accident or something, like they're really putting themselves in danger from this stuff. And of course, fentanyl's a huge problem here. But like when it comes to drinking and having a drinking, if you poisoning from alcohol, right, which can happen, you can drink too much in a night and not even be aware that that's what you're experiencing, but then having to rely on an ambulance going out that far and then come back, and then like you're really rolling the dice on if you're going to make it or not, or what's going to happen to you. So having services like AA and those types of meetings, usually those are held in like some of the bigger cities or in the towns and stuff, unless there just happens to be a little local community center or a church or something that hosts those. But I think I can really see the benefit in having a coach like you, where it's like they could jump on a call which, I mean, everybody has access to the internet now. Even if you don't have Wi-Fi, you've got cell service, right? And so being able to do that, and it's a life-saving service, honestly, for a lot of people. It could be, yeah.
Absolutely. And I would love to give a shout out. There's an organization called Moderation Management that
Hmm.
is just moderation.org. They have, I'd say they're like the closest thing to AA for moderation, but they have virtual meetings, several meetings every single day. So that
Yeah,
is a great resource for, if you don't want to be in person or you're not able to be in person,
yeah.
there's a ton of amazing options there because connection during this is huge.
Do you feel like people, when they come to you and they ask you to be their drinking coach, do you find that they trust you enough to like be completely honest with you and tell you the truth about their habits or to open up to you?
I would say like my gift is that people do feel like they can open up to me very quickly. It's something that I've had even as a kid, like,
Yeah.
my sizzle, I guess, which I do not take lightly at all. That being said, I make it very clear as soon as we start working together that they can lie to me all they want. All they're doing is lying to themselves. So at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like if they're investing in this, if they're investing in themselves, there's no point in not being honest because I can't help them if they're not being fully honest. They will never help themselves if they're not being honest with themselves. And ultimately, this just comes down to the relationship that they have with themselves, which can be the hardest and scariest thing to deal with in
Yes.
all of this.
Absolutely. Okay, so I know people have asked you lots of times about dry January, and what are your thoughts on it?
I have a love hate relationship. I do think that there's so much good that can come from it. Just the challenge to go that period of abstinence, absolutely, I'm all for it. If you do the work during that time, most people just, avoid any triggers, avoid all social situations, like especially January after the holidays. It's already known to be like one of the quietest, calmest times, which is why most people do it then
Hmm.
because there isn't all the social stuff going on. So that's an easier time to, reset, do all that. It's kind of like the biggest loser effect, though, to where you do all this too much too soon. You're not actually building the skills that when you go back to normal life, it
Yeah.
goes right back to how it was.
Right.
And the reason why I take the approach that I do is the all or nothing mentality. That is what is building during these dry months. So,
Mm.
dry January, if all you're focusing on is not drinking, you are telling yourself through every single day, every thought that you have, I can't, I can't, I can't.
Right.
So as soon as you can again, you start drinking more. So if you're doing the work during that time to actually understand your triggers, understand what's going on, under the surface, when you go to normal life again, you're much more able to handle those situations without having to drink through them or drink excessively. So to put it plainly, I support them if you're doing the work. For me, I focus like I do lower October, where we're focusing on like drinking less during October instead of sober. If you want to go sober, absolutely, but you're going to
Hmm.
be doing the steps as well. Hangover free holidays, that's really focused on like maintaining your current, because most people drink more during the holiday season
Yeah.
just because all the parties, so much more, get-togethers, some awkward meetings with families during the holidays that you're like, I don't want to be around these people, all those things. So whether you're drinking less or even maintaining is a great thing during the
Hmm.
holidays. And then dry-ish January that again, if you want to stop drinking for that period of time, absolutely. Otherwise, if you're really just focused on cutting back and establishing new habits and new mindsets around it, that is where it's effective long term.
Yeah. Incredible. It seems like it might be like I don't know when people go on diets, right? So all of a sudden a diet, and then you're doing so well for so long, and then the first chance you get, I've been so good, and now I get to treat myself to this piece of cake or whatever it is, this is bowl of ice cream, whatever it is, and then like you completely backslide with that one because it's not, I don't know. It's hard to maintain momentum. And I imagine if you're doing it on your own, we'll say that you go through the entire month of January without a drink, and then you go into February, and then you're starting on back to this, whatever, whatever real life, I guess, and being able to not, not abstain, then I think having a coach like yourself would be more beneficial than trying to do this on your own because kind of hard because and especially if you're used to drinking, right? Because normally the people around you aren't like encouragers of, hey, you should moderate, you should drink this moderately, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never
Oh,
heard that in
absolutely.
a social
Yeah.
circle.
Well, and
Yeah,
especially like in the States, when we're learning how to drink, we're not sitting around having a glass of wine with each other when we're like in high school or college, right?
right,
Like when
yeah,
we're not supposed to legally be drinking, we're binge drinking. So
yeah,
it's like if that's your first exposure and your
hmm,
experience in your
that's
adolescence,
true.
and then you're supposed to be able to just have a glass of wine, no problem, like there's a
Yeah,
huge disconnect there.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the other thing there, that I definitely want to bring up because people are always like, well, it's not a good time right now because I'm going on vacation. I have a wedding. I have life is going to life no matter what. We know that there's
Hmm.
never a perfect time to do this. I think that is why, dry January is so popular because January just notoriously people aren't traveling there's not all the social things. But that is also why it's not as helpful as if you are doing this during life. If you have a wedding and you have to show up and practice not drinking, that is the best practice you're going to get. That means the next event that you go to, you'll be like, I made it through that wedding. Like, I
Yeah,
can totally do this. You
right.
need to build that muscle and build that confidence that you can do any situation, regardless if you have a glass of wine or whatever in your hand or not.
Hmm. Yeah. I always believe that when people switch, careers, or even if they niche down on what they were doing previously, you always take those skills that you learned, previously at your other job, right, and your life experience. Obviously, you're doing that. So when people are going through with you as their, a drinking coach, uh, is it so? A lot of people lean on drinking, I would say, because of, like we were talking earlier, right? There's depression, there's stress, there's so many things in life, and that can really be, I guess, like a confidence killer in your natural life without the drinks, right? Like, I like who I am when I'm drinking. Like, I hear that a lot. You know what I mean? Because they're let loose and they can have fun and stuff. And so, are you helping them along the way as well of building that part of their life to where they're more confident in themselves when they are sober as well?
That is the number one thing in my program. Like, I don't advertise like transform your relationship with drinking and
Yeah,
yourself because people are, I don't need that. I'm good there. It's just the
right.
alcohol, right? But once you dig into it, it has nothing to do with the alcohol. I like to say most people don't have a drinking problem. Drinking is the solution.
Mm,
And so you have to understand what is the solution for that. I've found that most people drink for one of two reasons: either the pleasure, they want the buzz, the feel good, the
yeah.
liquid confidence, the whatever that is, or they drink for the stress reduction.
Mm,
So, and obviously that's very self explanatory. So, what I always encourage people to do, this is literally, it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, the first thing you should do is make a list of everything that brings you pleasure and everything that helps reduce stress. And before you drink, before you do any sort of habit that you're trying to change, do something on that list first, because that is you filling your emotional cup, which is what you're actually craving when you are going for, going to drink, going to eat, going to social media or to Amazon and spending.
yeah.
That
Right.
is what it is, right? It's you're trying to fill your emotional cup with something physical. So instead, fill your emotional cup first. And that is also going to help with the rewiring of the brain.
It's really, really, really sound advice. Yeah, and that's goes probably for anything, right? And that's not
No,
just drinking.
exactly.
That's just a
Yeah.
life application you can put in place. Yeah,
Yes, it's so simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it is so simple. And I think sometimes we make it so much harder on ourselves because it just, it's not supposed to be easy. So go back to the basics, simplify it, and that is where you start.
incredible. Well, you've given us a lot to think about. So this is new. Have you noticed there are more coaches like yourself that are popping up, or are you the only one that you know of? Or
There are definitely a few. I know when I first started doing this, there was not really anything that I had found like it.
hmm,
I had found a lot of the sober programs were come in and will help you like drink
yeah,
less, but once you were in, they were very much like, if you still want to drink after this, you have a problem. So
right,
that was very like off-putting to
mm,
me.
yeah,
Which is why I like doubled down and I'm like, no, moderation is possible, and I will never shame you into anything besides you are the only person that knows what's right for you. So it's definitely becoming more and more popular. Absolutely. I think, just like you were saying with the experience, like that is just such a big part of it. And I can speak from, I've struggled with anxiety and depression in my life. And my mom was in a bad car accident. And shortly after, she was getting like anxiety and panic attacks as we'd be driving, in just certain situations that would trigger her. And my dad never understood it. He's like, he couldn't comprehend it. And it was that moment that I feel like is very full circle with this, that if you've never struggled with drinking, it is very hard to help people through this because you really don't know what it is. Just like my dad could never help my mom through a panic attack. He's never had a panic attack in
Right.
his life. So he's like,
Yeah.
you are being a child. Like, what is going on here? And it is just, you have to really know the struggles, the shame, the judgment, all of the feelings that are going through in my mind to help people get to the other side. It's a lot more effective, if you will.
Incredible. Erica, thank you so much for educating us on what you do, because that's a new industry to me. I've never even thought about this, or like it makes so much sense when you talk about it. But like there's it's much needed resource that we needed, and we need more people to know about it. So hopefully we can get the word out at least. I hope you work so much that you can't take on any more clients. We have to open up more people. You
I'd
have to
love that.
expand your services, right?
Yes.
I will ask you before we get out of here, though. I always ask guests at the end of the show, with all your collected experience, both personally, professionally, and let's say that there is somebody that is out there that's listening to this, and they're in that position of, well, I don't really know if I have a problem or not. Like, I can't really identify it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like I drink too much. Sometimes I think I've got a handle on it, and like nothing's falling apart yet. What is a long-term solution for those people, would you say?
Start small. Literally, if it's taking a day off that you don't normally do, if it's I this is going to be cringe for some people, but I joke like as soon as you open the bottle, the can, the whatever, pour some out, because if it goes down, it's going to go down either your drain or the drain. So you decide which drain, but if you just want to drink a little bit less,
Hmm.
pour it out, and that is something easy that you can do. But this is, at the end of the day, it's all about harm reduction, and I know for me, if my only option was to never drink again or keep doing what I was doing, I would have kept doing it until it became a point where I never could drink again. And it doesn't have to do that. So just start small, focus on just one tiny win that you can get, and that gives the momentum that keeps propelling you forward.
Love that. Okay, so where can people go to follow you and Shame Over? Where do they go?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I am at lose the hangover.
Mhm.
Otherwise, go to shameover.me and everything will be found there. So
Great. And we'll definitely put those in the description of the show on YouTube, and in the show notes on the podcast versions. And so, yeah, thank you, Erica. This has been great. It's been great talking to you and learning from you. And you just, the rabbit hole thing we were talking about before we started here about, like, that's my addiction, right? Is like exploring something all the way through. And so you just opened up a completely new tunnel that has so many other tunnels connected to
yep.
it. So I have something to really look into. So I appreciate you for doing this.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for
Yeah.
everything you're doing, because this is just such important work and people are craving the information that
Mm.
you're providing. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we get this message to the people that need to hear it, so we can start, intervening in some people's lives. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for being here for the show. And also, if you're listening to this as an audio podcast on any of the audio podcast platforms, you can find us on YouTube. Search for Longterm, a podcast in recovery. We always ask, about the usual subscribes and likes and all that stuff. We love those because it helps grow the algorithm. But the number one thing that you can do to help grow this show, but not only that, but help the message to get to the people that need to hear it, is to share this episode with someone that you've heard Erica talk here today about some really important things that I don't think we've ever discussed on this show, and some resources that we previously did not know were even available or existed. And so share this episode with someone that could really benefit from hearing it. The worst that can happen is that they won't listen to it. The best thing that can happen is it saves a life. And so those are pretty high stakes. Yeah. And so we appreciate you for showing up for these shows, and we appreciate our audience for being here. And Erica, of course, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we will see you in the next episode.